My ex broke into my apartment, used my spare key to steal my dad's ashes and spell S-lot on my wall with them, then told me I was crazy for thinking it was him. When I confronted him, he sneered and said, "You probably staged it yourself for attention." I didn't say a word. That was 4 days ago. Last night, he was standing outside his mother's house in tears. To cope with my dad's death, I became a little quirky. You see, he died in a sudden car accident. So to keep his memory alive, I always repaired something in someone's home when I visit. I know it sounds a little weird, but my dad was a handyman. When you fix a home, you fix a heart, he'd always say. I was like Bob the Builder, except a girl and 10 times hotter. JK LOL. So when I first met my boyfriend's roommates, I brought my toolbox. Up until this point, we had been dating for 3 years. I had never gone over to his place because one of his roommates was a DJ and I get overstimulated pretty easily, but now that friend had finally moved out. So the first time I came over, I fixed the wobbly table in the kitchen, and I knew I had gotten on his roommate's good side when they all agreed that I was a keeper. Friday became our assigned date day, and every week I fixed something small. The couch leg that was a little shorter than the others, reattached a broken door handle, and remounted a curtain rod that was hanging on by a thread. And I guess my boyfriend already explained the reasoning behind it because they never asked, but they sure as heck thanked me for it, sometimes in the form of a home-cooked meal, other times in the form of letting me go on aux, whilst knowing that I'm unapologetically a Taylor Swift girl. So on Memorial weekend, we both had time off and he stayed at my place. And the next morning, he said he didn't want to say goodbye to me yet and asked me to go to his. I smiled, and right before we left the house, I grabbed my toolbox. Suddenly, my boyfriend lost it. He asked why I was so set on publicly humiliating him, and just before I could respond, he went on a 5-minute-long rant about how I was emasculating him, and how all his friends joked that I was a tranny for doing the manly jobs. I used his argument against him, and said that I was helping to make his apartment a home, which is a universally feminine trait. But then he came up with a new reason. He told me I was trauma dumping and ruining the vibe, because whenever I fixed something, it reminded him and his friends about my dad dying. I just sighed and told him to go without me, because I wasn't about to beg him or his shitty friends to let me do free work for them. Like, just because my dad is dead doesn't mean I have daddy issues, lol. When he got home, he told me he was sorry for being so harsh. I'm not going to apologize for doing free work, Theodore. I thought that would be enough to snap him out of whatever was going on, but it wasn't. He said that he had told all his friends that I refused to listen to him, and they all blocked me on Instagram and unanimously agreed that he had to break up with me. I asked if he defended me, and he shook his head. No, Amelia, they're right. He left right after. As I lay alone in bed that night, I noticed I had lost 4 followers on Instagram, except he only had 3 roommates. So I checked my boyfriend's account and saw that he had unfollowed me too, and as if that wasn't bad enough, I saw that he had followed 30 new girls with a verification tick. None of them even followed him back, and he had all their recent posts liked. I should have felt hurt, but I wasn't, because more than anything, I was embarrassed. For me and for him. For the entire week, he was posting videos of him out clubbing, and in one of them, a girl was even grinding on him while he slapped her butt. That broke me. Neither of us texted each other until Friday morning, when he asked if he could come over. I responded with a dry K, and he just liked my message. As soon as I let him in the door, he finally spilled the truth. He told me that he took his friends' phones when they weren't looking and blocked me without them knowing. Apparently, after the first time I had come over, one of his friends, Andy, commented on how lucky he was to have me. I hadn't even spoken to Andy, so I was super surprised to hear this. But then he kept going, and he'll never admit it, but I know he wants you, and I thought telling you directly would boost your ego, so I just wanted to make sure that you never came over again. Apparently, all those videos were just to make me jealous, so I could feel the same way he did. I laughed in his face and told him to get the F out of my apartment, because he was giving sassy men apocalypse. So I did what my dad would have wanted, and I bit back. I texted Andy on my spam and told him me and my BF broke up. One thing led to another, and I ended up back at his place. He was nothing like Theodore. He actually gave me aftercare and made me feel special. I really liked him. And the next morning, I was wearing his t-shirt as we ate breakfast together. That's when Theodore walked into the kitchen. His face went white, and he dropped his Android phone on the floor. I smiled at him. Andy's making eggs, sunny side up. Theodore walked out. Me and Andy burst into laughter. I thought Theodore was finally out of my life, but I was wrong, because 2 days later when I got home from work, I saw my apartment had been broken into, and my dad's ashes were smeared in writing across the wall, spelling out the word S-lot in gray dust that used to be my father. I just stood there frozen. My legs wouldn't move. I couldn't even cry. Someone had taken the most sacred thing I owned and used it to hurt me. The urn lay empty on its side beneath a horrible word. I called the cops immediately, my hands shaking so badly I could barely dial. They came and took photos and asked me a bunch of questions. I told them about Theodore and our breakup, about his jealousy and the blocked numbers. They wrote everything down but said without proof it was him, there wasn't much they could do. The officer, an older woman with kind eyes, suggested I talk to my landlord about security footage. I spent the rest of the night cleaning, using a small brush and dustpan. I couldn't leave my dad like that. I carefully collected what I could and put it back in the urn, whispering apologies to him the entire time. Some was lost forever in the carpet fibers, ground in by whoever had done this. That hurt the most. My dad, who spent his life building and fixing, reduced to dust in apartment carpet. I held the urn and cried until morning. I called my building's landlord first thing the next morning, my hands still trembling as I dialed his number. Mr. Peterson was this older guy who always wore the same brown cardigan, no matter the weather. The thing had patches on the elbows and smelled faintly of mothballs and pipe tobacco. He came up to look at the damage within the hour, took one glance at the wall, and shook his head like I was a child who'd spilled juice on the carpet. The way his eyes narrowed behind his wire-rimmed glasses made my stomach drop. He said since there was no forced entry, I probably did it myself for attention. My mouth fell open so wide I probably could have caught flies. I showed him the police report, the official document with the case number and everything, but he just shrugged and said young people do crazy things after breakups. He actually used air quotes around breakups, laughs, like my relationship hadn't been real. He left me standing there with cleaning supplies in my hands, the chemical smell of bleach making my eyes water. That's when it hit me like a physical blow to the chest. Theodore still had my spare key. I'd given it to him months ago when I had the flu and needed someone to bring me soup. He'd been so caring then, showing up with homemade chicken noodle and crackers, sitting on my bedroom floor reading me funny tweets while I dozed. I never got it back. The realization made me feel violated all over again. I called a locksmith immediately, my fingers fumbling with my phone, and had them come out that afternoon. The guy was efficient, a burly man named Carlos who didn't ask questions about why I needed an emergency relock. He changed all my locks in under an hour, the sound of his drill drowning out my racing thoughts. I paid extra for the rush job, wincing at the cost but knowing it was worth every penny. Charles texted asking if I was okay, said Theodore had been acting weird all morning, pacing around their apartment and muttering to himself. I told him I was handling it but didn't give details. I needed to do this alone, needed to prove to myself I could. That night I couldn't sleep. Every little sound made me jump. The ice maker in my fridge, a neighbor's footsteps in the hallway, even the building settling. My eyes burned from staring at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the paint. Around 2 a.m., I heard something outside my door. Not footsteps exactly, more like a shuffling, scraping sound. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might burst through my ribs. I crept over on bare feet, trying to avoid the squeaky floorboard near the kitchen, and looked through the peephole. Nothing, just the empty hallway with its ugly green carpet and flickering fluorescent light. But when I opened the door in the morning to get my mail, there was a USB drive taped under my welcome mat. It was small and black, unremarkable except for how it made my hands shake as I picked it up. I plugged it into my old laptop, the one I use for Netflix and nothing important. My fingers hovered over the trackpad for a moment before I clicked open the folder. Inside were dozens of photos. Me sleeping in my bed, my face peaceful and unaware. Me cooking dinner, stirring pasta while wearing my ratty college t-shirt. Me brushing my teeth, toothpaste foam on my chin. All taken from inside my apartment over the past few months. Some were taken from my closet, others from behind my kitchen counter. The last photo was from 2 nights ago, right before the break-in. In it, I was sitting on my couch, Dad's urn in my lap, talking to it like I sometimes did when I missed him most. The violation of that private moment made my stomach churn. I ran to the bathroom and threw up, my whole body shaking as I gripped the toilet seat. I texted Theodore immediately, my fingers flying across the screen, told him I knew what he did and I had proof. He responded within minutes, faster than he ever had when we were together. His message was full of gaslighting and deflection, saying I was crazy, said I was the one who'd been acting obsessive, showing up at his place uninvited. He claimed I was stalking him and his friends, that they all felt uncomfortable around me. Then he said maybe I took those photos myself to frame him because I couldn't handle the breakup. Classic Theodore, always twisting things around until you questioned your own reality. I'd fallen for it so many times before, but not now. Not with evidence literally saved on my laptop. The next day at work, everything seemed normal until lunch. I'd actually managed to focus on my spreadsheets for a few hours, losing myself in the familiar rhythm of data entry. My manager Julie called me into her office just as I was heating up leftover Chinese food. Someone had filed an anonymous complaint about me, said I was stealing company time and acting unprofessionally. The words hit me like ice water. My access badge was temporarily suspended pending investigation. Julie looked uncomfortable as she explained, fidgeting with her pen and avoiding eye contact. She said it came through an unusual channel, not the normal HR process. The complaint had been slipped under her door that morning, typed and unsigned. I asked who filed it, but she couldn't say. Company policy, she mumbled, though I could tell she thought something was off too. I sat in my car for 20 minutes just breathing, watching people come and go from the building where I'd worked for 3 years without a single complaint. My hands gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. Then I remembered something Theodore had mentioned once during a family barbecue. His cousin Grace worked at my company, not in HR, but on the facilities team. The same team that managed building access and security badges. The same team that would know how to bypass normal complaint procedures. I pulled up LinkedIn on my phone, my battery already low from stress scrolling. There she was, Grace Morrison, facilities coordinator. Her profile photo showed her at what looked like Theodore's birthday party last year. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. I started documenting everything with obsessive detail. Created a folder on my phone with screenshots, timestamps, photos of the USB, the police report, everything. I organized it by date and type of incident, creating a timeline that showed the escalation clearly. That afternoon, I installed a Ring camera, the best model they had at Best Buy. The salesperson tried to upsell me on a whole security system, but I just needed to see who came to my door. The setup was easy, took maybe 15 minutes including the time to download the app and create an account. I also ordered a camera for inside my apartment, one of those nanny cam things that looks like a clock. It would arrive in 2 days, but I wished I had it now. That very night, my Ring app sent an alert. Motion detected at 11:47 p.m. My heart raced as I opened the live feed, and there was Theodore, wearing a delivery driver vest that looked hastily thrown on over his regular clothes. He was holding a package, but something about how he held it seemed off, like it was empty. He knocked and called out that he had an Amazon delivery, his voice pitched higher than normal. I didn't order anything. I watched him stand there for 5 minutes, knocking repeatedly, each knock getting louder and more insistent. His face cycled through expressions, fake concern, frustration, then anger. Finally, building security showed up. Through the camera's audio, I heard Theodore tell them he was just trying to deliver a package. His lies came so easily, so naturally. When they asked for his delivery ID, he fumbled, then said he was actually just trying to return something I'd left at his place. They told him to leave, but didn't file any report. I watched him argue with them for another few minutes before he finally left, but not before he looked directly at my camera and smirked. That smirk said everything. He knew I was watching, and he wanted me to know he knew. I felt so powerless, like I was drowning in my own apartment. The security guards clearly didn't take it seriously, probably thought it was just relationship drama. The police couldn't do anything without more proof of immediate danger. torture. My job was on the line for reasons I couldn't even properly defend against. I was exhausted from not sleeping, from jumping at every sound, from checking my Ring app every 5 minutes. Dark circles had formed under my eyes, and I'd lost 5 pounds from forgetting to eat. Charles invited me to stay at his place for a few days. His text was sweet, saying he had an extra toothbrush and would make me breakfast. I hesitated, not wanting to bring my drama into his space, but finally agreed. The thought of another sleepless night alone was unbearable. I packed a bag with shaking hands and my dad's urn, carefully wrapped in a soft towel I'd bought specifically for moving it. Charles's place felt different without Theodore there. Quieter, calmer, like the very walls had relaxed. The usual mess of Theodore's belongings wasn't scattered everywhere. Charles made me dinner. This simple chicken stir-fry that somehow tasted amazing after days of barely eating. He'd even remembered I didn't like bell peppers and picked them all out. We watched a movie on his couch, some mindless comedy that actually made me laugh. He held my hand during the scary preview before the movie, and I actually felt myself relax for the first time in days. His thumb traced small circles on my palm, and I let myself believe everything would be okay. That night, I slept better than I had all week, feeling safe with someone else in the apartment. But something shifted over the next few days. Charles seemed distracted, checking his phone constantly, the screen lighting up his face in the dark. He'd leave the room to take calls, closing the door behind him. Once I heard him say, I know, in a placating tone. When I asked if everything was okay, he said work was just busy. But he worked from home as a graphic designer. What could be so urgent? On the third night, I woke up around 3 a.m. to use the bathroom and heard him on the phone in the kitchen. The apartment was so quiet I could hear every word. He was laughing, saying something about winning a bet. Easiest 500 I ever made, he said. Then I heard him say he wasn't gonna touch me anymore, that he'd done his part. My blood ran cold, ice spreading through my veins. I stayed perfectly still, pretending to sleep when he came back to bed. He slipped under the covers and put his arm around me, and it took everything I had not to flinch away. At dawn, while he snored softly, I quietly gathered my things. My hands shook as I folded my clothes, as I rewrapped Dad's urn. I left while he was in the shower, the sound of running water covering my escape. I didn't even leave a note. What would I say? Thanks for pretending to care? He texted me an hour later, asking where I went, saying he was worried. Then he called 3 times, leaving increasingly frantic voicemails. I didn't answer. Instead, I did something I should have done earlier. I checked his Venmo, remembering how he'd made a big show of his transactions being public because he had nothing to hide. There it was, from 2 days ago. A payment from Theodore for $500. The memo said, "Loyalty always wins," with a handshake emoji. I screenshotted it immediately, adding it to my evidence folder. Everything made sense now. The sudden interest after months of casual friendship, the perfectly timed invitation to stay over, the weird behavior once I was there. I felt sick all over again, but also strangely vindicated. How could I have been so stupid? But also, how could they be so cruel? But I wasn't going to fall apart, not this time. I went into investigation mode, channeling all my hurt into productivity. I pulled up every text, every social media interaction, every timestamp. I made a physical timeline in a notebook I bought specifically for this purpose, connecting all the dots with different colored pens. Red for Theodore's harassment, blue for the break-in, green for the work complaint, purple for Charles's betrayal. It painted a clear picture of systematic harassment, a coordinated effort to break me down. I booked an emergency session with my therapist, Dr. Bradley. Not because I needed emotional support, though I probably did, but because he was state certified and could sign a wellness affidavit. I explained everything to him in detail, showed him my documentation. His face grew more concerned with each photo, each screenshot. He was horrified, especially about the ashes. That's not just crossing a line, he said. That's obliterating it. He wrote a detailed letter stating I was of sound mind and documenting the harassment I'd described. The letter was 3 pages long and included his professional opinion that I was experiencing targeted harassment. Armed with the letter and my evidence folder, I went straight to my company's main office downtown. Not to Julie, but to her boss, the department head Roy. I'd only met him once at the holiday party, but I remembered he'd seemed fair. I laid everything out on his desk methodically. The complaint timeline showing it came right after I'd changed my locks. Grace's LinkedIn showing her connection to Theodore, the photos from the USB, the police report. Roy's face got more serious with each document. He actually took notes, asking clarifying questions. He said he'd look into it immediately and asked if I felt safe. It was the first time anyone in authority had asked me that. 2 days later, Julie called me back to work. My access was restored with full back pay for the suspension. She didn't say much, but her smile seemed genuinely relieved. I heard through the office gossip that Grace had been quietly let go. Something about misusing company resources and violating security protocols. I didn't feel bad. She chose to help Theodore hurt me. She made her choice. But Theodore wasn't done. I started finding sticky notes on my car windshield. Just one word each time. First sorry, then please, then forever. They were in his handwriting. The same messy scrawl I used to find endearing. I kept them all, adding to my evidence file. Then came the voicemails from different numbers. Heavy breathing, hang-ups, sometimes just music playing. Always love songs we used to listen to together. Our song played 3 times one night from 3 different numbers. The worst was when I started getting comments on my old Instagram posts from accounts with no profile pictures, using variations of my dad's full name. Robert would be disappointed, one said under a photo of me at a work event. Bob knows what you did, said another under a picture of my last birthday dinner. The cruelty of using my dead father's name made me shake with rage. I screenshotted everything before blocking them, but new accounts kept popping up like demented whack-a-moles. I decided to fight back differently this time. I created an anonymous account and made a video, used a voice filter that made me sound robotic, blurred any identifying features, but I told the whole story in excruciating detail. The jealousy over my professional success, the break-in, the ashes, the stalking, the conspiracy with Charles. I included screenshots with names and faces blacked out, but anyone who knew us would recognize the details. The vest Theodore wore, Charles's Venmo username, the specific words used. I posted it on TikTok TikTok with hashtags about toxic relationships and stalking. It blew up overnight. 50,000 views while I slept, then 100,000 by morning, then 500,000 by lunch. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive. Women sharing similar stories, offering advice, expressing outrage about the ashes. But the comment that changed everything came on day 2. Wow, I always wondered why he wouldn't let me come over. The account name was Emma_95. I clicked on the profile with trembling fingers. Emma was gorgeous, worked as a nurse at the children's hospital, and had been posting subtle things about her boyfriend who lived with roommates for months. The timeline matched up perfectly with when Charles and I were together. She tagged Marcus and the other roommates in her comment. Within hours, Charles's carefully constructed nice guy image crumbled like wet cardboard. Marcus commented back, saying he had no idea Charles had a girlfriend. The other roommate, Timothy, posted his own video calling Charles out for being a snake. Their friend group turned on him fast, the comment section becoming a roast session. Charles tried to do damage control, posting that it was complicated, that Emma knew he was seeing other people. Emma responded with screenshots of him saying he loved her and wanted to move in together. Messages sent while I was literally in his bed. The internet ate him alive. His follower count dropped by the hour. Theodore tried to salvage things by posting his own version, but without proof, just rambling accusations that I was crazy and obsessed. No one believed him. He claimed I'd photoshopped everything, that I'd broken into my own apartment. His follower count dropped by hundreds. He kept making new accounts to comment on my video, but they got reported and banned within hours. The TikTok community had unofficially adopted me. That's when I decided on my final move. I'd been thinking about it for days, turning it over in my mind like a puzzle piece. Theodore's mom lived about 40 minutes away in a suburb with tree-lined streets. Betty Morrison was a sweet woman who'd always been kind to me. She'd sent me a sympathy card when Dad died with a handwritten note about loss, had invited me to family dinners where she made sure I had vegetarian options. I'd helped her fix a leaky kitchen faucet once when Theodore claimed he was too busy. I drove out on a Saturday morning, the autumn leaves just starting to turn. She answered the door in a flour-covered apron, clearly in the middle of baking. I could smell cinnamon rolls from the doorway. Her face lit up when she saw me, then fell when she noticed my expression. I asked if we could talk. She invited me in for coffee without hesitation, bustling around her kitchen to make it just how I liked it. 1 sugar, oat milk. I told her everything. Showed her the photos from the USB, the screenshots, the video of Theodore at my door. When I got to the part about Dad's ashes, she gasped and covered her mouth. Tears ran down her face and she had to sit down. She kept apologizing, saying she didn't raise him to be like this. I told her it wasn't her fault, and I meant it. Then she told me something that explained a lot. She'd been paying Theodore's rent since he graduated, $800 a month for 4 years. He told her he was saving up to buy a place. That startup life was tough. She'd believed him, wanted to help her only son. She'd sacrificed her retirement savings to support him, had taken extra shifts at the hospital where she worked as an administrator. She had no idea he was spending money on clubs and trying to impress Instagram models with bottle service he couldn't afford. She asked to keep some of the evidence. I gave her copies of everything. When I left, she hugged me tight and whispered that she was sorry about my dad, that he'd be proud of how strong I was. I cried the whole drive home, finally letting myself feel the grief of everything I'd lost. The next week, Theodore's Instagram stories stopped. No more club videos, no more thirst traps, no more photos of expensive dinners. Then his account went private. Through mutual friends, I heard he'd had to move back home. His mom had cut him off completely. He was working at a grocery store, the same one where we'd shopped together, living in his childhood bedroom with superhero posters still on the walls. I decided it was time for a fresh start. I deleted all my social media except LinkedIn, changed my phone number, found a new apartment 2 neighborhoods over. It was smaller but had better security, a doorman, and cameras in every hallway. When I got the keys, I stood in the empty space and whispered Dad's favorite phrase, "When you fix a home, you fix a heart." I spent the next month making it mine, fixed a squeaky cabinet door that the super said wasn't worth bothering with, installed better lighting in the bathroom so I could actually see to do my makeup, painted the walls a soft blue that reminded me of the ocean. Each repair felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. I even hung a small shelf specifically for Dad's urn, where the morning light would hit it just right. I bought a small succulent to keep it company. 2 months later, I was at the grocery store buying ingredients for dinner. I'd gotten into cooking more, finding it therapeutic. I turned the corner by the produce section and almost ran into Charles. He was alone, looking tired and smaller somehow. He'd lost weight, and his usually perfect hair was unkempt. Our eyes met. I watched him process seeing me, watched the guilt and shame flicker across his face, watched him realize he should probably leave, but I didn't move. I just stood there, holding my basket of vegetables, completely calm. He was the one who looked away first, mumbled something about forgetting something, and turned around. I watched him walk quickly toward the exit, practically running by the time he hit the automatic doors. I finished my shopping in peace, even took extra time picking out the perfect tomatoes for the pasta sauce I was planning. Justice doesn't always come from courts or cops. Sometimes it's just standing your ground in a grocery store, knowing you survived. Sometimes it's a mother's disappointment cutting deeper than any legal punishment. Sometimes it's the internet seeing through someone's lies. But mostly, it's rebuilding your life piece by piece, repair by repair, until you're whole again. I still fix things when I visit people. Last week, I helped my new neighbor Julie with her stuck window. She offered me cookies as thanks, homemade chocolate chips still warm from the oven. We ended up talking for hours about everything and nothing. She mentioned her son was an electrician, asked if I'd like to meet him sometime. I said maybe, and meant it. Dad was right about fixing homes and hearts, but he never mentioned that sometimes the heart that needs fixing most is your own, and that's okay too. The toolbox sits by my door, ready for the next project. His picture is still tucked inside, next to the hammer. I know he'd be proud. These days, I sleep through the night. My new place has better soundproofing, and the doorman is an ex-Marine named Roy who takes his job seriously. He knows my coffee order and always asks how my day is going. Theodore hasn't tried to contact me since moving home. Charles disappeared from social media entirely. I heard Marcus and the others brother's got a new roommate, a guy who apparently cooks amazing Korean food and has no drama. I'm taking a woodworking class now. Every Thursday night, I learn something new. Last week, we made cutting boards. Mine's a little crooked, but it works perfectly for chopping vegetables. The instructor, an older man named Albert, reminds me of Dad. Patient, encouraging, always ready with a gentle correction. He says I have good hands for the work. My therapist says I'm doing well. We've moved from weekly sessions to monthly check-ins. The evidence folder is backed up in 3 places, just in case, but I haven't needed to look at it in weeks. Work is going better than ever. Julie promoted me last month, said my presentation skills had really improved. I didn't mention that facing down a stalker makes client meetings seem easy. Sometimes I run into people who knew Theodore and me as a couple. They ask what happened, why we broke up. I just smile and say we grew apart. No need to rehash the drama. The people who matter know the truth. The rest can wonder. I've started dating again, slowly. Coffee dates mostly, nothing serious yet. I'm upfront about the toolbox thing now. If they think it's weird, we're not compatible. One guy, Terry, actually asked if I could teach him some basic repairs. We spent our 3rd date fixing his wobbly bookshelf. He made me laugh when he pretended the level was a lightsaber. The urn sits on its shelf, catching the morning sun. I tell Dad about my days sometimes, about the things I've fixed and the people I've met. I think he'd like that I'm teaching others now, passing on what he taught me. His legacy isn't just in the repairs, but in the strength he gave me to rebuild when everything fell apart. Theodore taught me something too, though he'll never know it. He taught me that the biggest repair job is sometimes walking away from what's broken beyond fixing. And that's a lesson worth learning, even if the tuition was paid in ashes and pain. Now when I pick up my tools, I remember that some things are meant to be fixed, and others are meant to be left behind. The wisdom is knowing the difference. I kept expecting something else to happen, but weeks passed quietly. My new routine settled in nicely. Work, woodworking class, grocery shopping at the store on the other side of town. I even joined a hiking group that met Saturday mornings. The leader, a woman named Rose, had this infectious energy that made even the steepest trails seem manageable. Life was actually getting good again. Then one Tuesday, my doorman Roy called up to my apartment, said there was a delivery that needed my signature. I wasn't expecting anything, but sometimes work sent documents. I went down to the lobby, and there was this young guy holding an envelope, official looking, with my name typed on the front. I signed for it and opened it right there in the lobby. It was a letter from Theodore, not threatening or anything, just pathetic. 3 pages of him explaining how sorry he was, how he'd been going to therapy, how he understood now what he'd done wrong. He mentioned he was seeing someone at the community center, working through his issues. The last page was the kicker, though. He wanted to meet up to apologize in person and return something of mine. I crumpled it up and tossed it in the lobby trash. Roy watched me do it and gave me a little nod. But the thing about Theodore's letter stuck with me. What could he possibly have of mine? I'd gotten everything when we broke up. My clothes, my books, even the plant I'd left at his place. Then it hit me. The spare key to my dad's storage unit. I'd given it to him 2 years ago when I needed help moving some of Dad's tools to my apartment. The storage unit had the rest of Dad's things, his workbench, boxes of family photos, his collection of vintage power tools. I'd been meaning to go through it all but kept putting it off. Too painful. I called the storage place immediately. They said no one had accessed the unit recently, but they'd flag it and call me if anyone tried. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. What if Theodore had already been there? What if he'd taken things? I drove out to the storage facility at 6 a.m. the next morning. My hands shook as I unlocked the unit, but everything looked exactly as I'd left it. Dad's workbench against the back wall, boxes stacked neatly, tools hanging on the pegboard he'd installed himself. I spent the morning going through boxes, partly to check nothing was missing, partly because I finally felt ready. Found photos of Dad teaching me to use a saw when I was 8. My first birdhouse, crooked and painted bright purple, his notes for different projects, his handwriting getting shakier in the later ones. I sat on the concrete floor and let myself really miss him for the first time in months. That's when I noticed something off. One of the toolboxes on the shelf wasn't Dad's. It was newer, black instead of red. I pulled it down and opened it. Inside was an envelope with my name on it and a USB drive, different from the creepy one from before. This one was silver. My stomach dropped, but I had to know. I took both items home. The letter was from Charles. His handwriting was neat, careful. He explained that Theodore had been blackmailing him for months. Apparently, Charles had made some mistakes at his last job, used company software for personal projects. Nothing major, but enough to get him fired if it came out. Theodore found out somehow and held it over him. The whole thing with me was Theodore's idea. Charles swore he actually did like me, that the money was just Theodore's way of making it seem transactional. The USB had proof, screenshots of Theodore's threats, recorded phone calls where Theodore laid out exactly what Charles had to do. Get close to me, make me trust him, then pull away, make me feel crazy and alone. The recordings were dated starting a month before Theodore and I even broke up. He'd been planning it that long. I didn't know what to do with this information. Part of me wanted to feel bad for Charles, but I couldn't. He still chose to hurt me. He could have told me the truth, could have refused, could have done literally anything else, but he chose to play along. I added the files to my evidence folder and tried to move on. The next week, Theodore showed up at my work, just standing outside the building when I left for lunch. He looked terrible, thinner, older somehow, wearing clothes that didn't fit right. He tried to approach me, but I walked straight past him to my car. He followed, talking fast about how he needed to explain, how his mom kicked him out, how he'd lost everything. I got in my car and locked the doors. He stood there in the parking lot, still talking to my closed window. Security came out and made him leave. My manager Julie saw the whole thing from her office window. She called me in and asked if I needed help. I showed her the restraining order paperwork I'd started but hadn't filed yet. She said the company would support whatever I needed to do. Having that backup felt good. I filed the restraining order that afternoon. The process was easier than I expected. The judge looked at my evidence folder, now thick as a phone book, and granted it immediately. Theodore would be served within 48 hours. He couldn't come within 500 feet of me, my home, or my work. It felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders, but Theodore had one more card to play. That weekend, I got a call from the storage facility. Someone Someone had tried to access my unit with a key. They'd been turned away because of the flag on the account, but the security guard got a good look at him. It was Theodore. He'd apparently made a copy of the key before giving it back. The facility banned him from the property and gave me the security footage. I'd had enough. I called Betty, Theodore's mom, told her about the storage unit, the restraining order, everything. She was quiet for a long time. Then she told me Theodore had been lying to her too. He wasn't in therapy. He wasn't working on himself. He'd been using her computer to create fake social media accounts, still trying to track me online. She'd caught him the night before. She asked if she could come over. I hesitated but agreed. She showed up an hour later with a box. Inside were things Theodore had taken from my apartment over our relationship. Little things I hadn't even noticed were missing. A necklace my dad gave me for graduation, some old photos, even a coffee mug I thought I'd lost. She'd found them hidden in Theodore's room. Betty cried as she handed them over, said she was failing as a mother. I told her she wasn't responsible for his choices. She'd raised him right. He just chose to go wrong. She said she was sending him to stay with his uncle in another state. The uncle was a former Marine who ran a ranch. No internet, no social media, just hard work and accountability. Theodore was leaving in 2 days whether he wanted to or not. I never saw Theodore again after that. Betty texted me when he was gone, said he'd fought it, but eventually got in the car. She apologized one more time and said she understood if I never wanted to hear from her again. I told her maybe someday we could get coffee, but not yet. She said she'd wait. Charles tried reaching out once more, a long email about how sorry he was. I didn't respond, just forwarded it to my lawyer in case I needed it later. He mentioned he was moving to another city, starting fresh. Good for him, I guess. Marcus reached out too, but just to say he was sorry he hadn't seen what was happening. He seemed genuine, but I wasn't ready for any connections to that old life. My new life kept getting better. The woodworking class turned into a real hobby. I made a jewelry box for Rose from hiking group, and she loved it so much she commissioned me to make another for her sister. Word spread, and soon I had a little side business going. Nothing major, just custom pieces here and there. It felt good to create things, to build instead of just repair. Terry from the coffee dates became a regular thing. Nothing serious at first, just someone to see movies with and try new restaurants. He never pushed, never asked too many questions about my past. When I finally told him the whole story, he just held my hand and said Theodore was an idiot. He asked if he could see the restraining order, not because he didn't believe me, but because he wanted to know what Theodore looked like, just in case I ever run into him, he said. It was weirdly sweet. 6 months after everything went down, I finally felt ready to really go through Dad's storage unit. Terry offered to help, and I accepted. We spent a whole Saturday sorting through boxes, organizing tools, deciding what to keep and what to donate. I kept the vintage stuff and anything with memories attached. The rest went to a vocational school that taught kids trades. Dad would have liked that. At the bottom of one box, I found something that made me stop. Dad's first toolbox, the one he'd had since before I was born. Inside was a note in his handwriting. For my little fixer, keep building, keep repairing, keep making the world better one project at a time. Love, Dad. It was dated just a week before he died. Terry found me crying over it and just sat with me until I was ready to keep going. I had the note framed and hung it in my workshop. Yeah, I have a workshop now, just a corner of my apartment, but it's mine. The jewelry box business grew enough that I needed proper space to work. My bench is set up by the window where the light is best. Dad's vintage tools hang on the wall, mixed with new ones I've bought myself. The restraining order is still active, but I don't think about it much anymore. Theodore's social media stays dark. I heard through the grapevine that he's still at his uncle's ranch, actually working now. Maybe he'll figure himself out, maybe not. Not my problem anymore. Charles disappeared completely. Even Marcus lost track of him. Better that way. Betty and I did eventually get that coffee. Took almost a year, but one day I felt ready. We met at a neutral place, talked for 2 hours. She showed me pictures of the ranch. Theodore actually working with his hands for once. She didn't ask for forgiveness or try to excuse what he did. Just wanted me to know she was proud of how I'd handled everything. We text occasionally now. Nothing deep, just holiday greetings and the occasional update. My evidence folder sits in a safety deposit box now. Haven't needed to look at it in months, but it's there if I ever do. The lawyer said the restraining order could be extended indefinitely if needed. For now, the original term is enough. Theodore knows to stay away, and that's all I need. Work promoted me again last month. Senior position, my own office with a window. Julie jokes that I'm gunning for her job. Maybe someday. For now, I'm happy where I am. The hiking group became a real friend group. We do dinners now too, game nights at each other's places, normal stuff that feels extraordinary after everything. Terry and I made it official a few weeks ago. Nothing fancy, just decided we were done pretending we weren't serious. He has a key to my place now, knows the doorman by name. Roy approves, told me Terry seems like good people. He even started learning woodworking so we could do projects together. His first cutting board was worse than mine, which made me stupidly happy. I still carry Dad's toolbox when I visit friends. Fixed Rose's kitchen drawer last week, helped another friend install shelves. Nobody thinks it's weird anymore. It's just what I do. Terry calls me the friend everyone wants to have. I fix things. He cooks amazing food. We make a good team. The urn still sits on its shelf, but it doesn't feel as heavy anymore. I tell Dad about the good stuff now, about the business, about Terry, about how I'm teaching a neighbor's kid basic repairs. She's 12 and reminds me of myself at that age. Eager to learn, not afraid to get her hands dirty. Her mom says she talks about our lessons all week. Last month, I made my first real furniture piece, a bookshelf for my apartment, designed from scratch. It's not perfect. One shelf is slightly crooked, but it's mine. Built with my hands, my tools, my vision. Terry helped me carry it up to the apartment, and we loaded it with books that night. It felt like the last piece of reclaiming my space. Sometimes I think about what would have happened if I'd never brought my toolbox to Theodore's place. If I'd just been a normal girlfriend who showed up empty-handed. But then I wouldn't have learned how strong I could be. Wouldn't have found out who really had my back. Wouldn't have ended up here, building a life I actually love. The anniversary of Dad's death came and went last week. I spent it in the workshop, making a picture frame for that photo of us building my first birdhouse. Terry brought me lunch, sat with me while I worked, didn't try to make it better, just kept me company. That night we had dinner with my mom, told stories about dad. Good ones, funny ones, the kind that make you laugh while you cry. Betty sent a card. Simple, just thinking of you today. I appreciated that she remembered. She included a photo of Theodore actually smiling while fixing a fence. First genuine smile I'd seen from him in years. Maybe the ranch is doing him good, maybe not. Either way, he's staying there, and I'm staying here, and that's how it should be. My life isn't perfect now. Still have bad days, still sometimes check my Ring camera too many times. But mostly I'm good. Better than good. I'm building something real, something solid. One repair at a time, one project at a time. Dad would be proud. Hell, I'm proud. The toolbox sits by my door, ready for the next adventure. Tonight, it's dinner at Rose's place. Her garbage disposal is making weird noises. Terry's bringing dessert, I'm bringing solutions. It's a good system, a good life, and I built it myself, with my own 2 hands. When you fix a home, you fix a heart. Dad was right about that. He just never mentioned that sometimes the home you need to fix is your own, and that's the best project of all.